and you have innumerable forms extended on all sides. O Lord, manifested as you are in the form of the universe, I see neither your beginning, nor the middle, not even the end. So he just is a continuous flow of being, of bellies, of arms, of legs, of eyes, of mouths, and innumerable forms. And there is no beginning, there is no middle, there is no end. It's a continuous flow of things. The Lord is there, all pervading, extended on all sides. So we have to just read through these verses.
किरीटिनं गदिनं चक्रिणं च तेजोराशिं सर्वतो दीप्तिमन्तं पश्यामि त्वां दुर्निरीक्ष्यं समन्तात् दीप्तानलार्कद्युतिमप्रमेयम्.
Yeah. So he says, I see you with the kirit. The kiriti is the, I see you endowed with a diadem, a jeweled crown. I see you with a mace. I see you with a discus. I see you as a mass of splendor glowing all around, having the brilliance of of a blazing fire and the sun, both put together. And you're very hard to gaze, Durniriksham, and you're immeasurable on all sides. So the image is too vast, the cosmic vision. God is showing him in his full glory, full vastness, full greatness. And it's a form which is very hard to gaze at because it is very brilliant. It's like the blazing fire and the sun, and he can't see the beginning, the end, the middle. So shall we read the next verse?
Yeah. त्वमक्षरं परमं वेदितव्यं त्वमस्य विश्वस्य परन्निधानं त्वमव्ययः शाश्वतधर्मगोप्ता सनातनस्त्वं पुरुषो मतो मे.
So Arjun is further describing now, and he said, you are the supreme imperishable, worthy of being known. You are the ultimate refuge of this universe. You are again the protector of the ageless dharma. I consider you to be eternal primal being. Primal being. Now, when Arjun sees the Lord, he understands that the thing worth knowing is only the Lord. Everything else is so insignificant in front of this cosmic vision. And Arjun says, you are the supreme imperishable, worthy of being known. That is the thing which one has to know. And you are the ultimate refuge. You are the protector of the ageless dharma. And you are the eternal primal being. You are the first being. So we will just read through these verses. There is nothing to say about this. One has to read or listen to these verses in awe because it's true. Because he is brilliant. He is more than brilliance. He is immeasurable. He is imperishable. He is the thing which one needs to know. And everything is secondary. God is the primary being or the concept worthy of being known. So, anything to say?
No, I was saying, I was just going to ask, so Sanatanastvam Purusho Mato Me.
Yeah.
So here Purusha is actually beyond masculine and feminine. But everywhere in all religions, God is portrayed in the masculine.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, now, but we don't know for sure whether God is masculine or feminine, but it is because It has to be portrayed as masculine because Prakriti is the feminine aspect of God. Prakriti is never portrayed as masculine. It is portrayed as feminine. So probably that's why the division, though there is no uh, like no proof, or we don't know whether Prakriti is masculine or feminine. Yeah, Sunilji, you're on mute.
Sir, the ultimate is beyond divisions. So, including the division of male and female. So that is, in fact, beyond description. And only at the next level of simplification, does any duality come in. And, if Prakriti, if the manifest world has been portrayed as feminine, then the cause of that is kind of portrayed as masculine. I think it's just a traditional matter.
Yeah.
Purusha in Sankhya has been portrayed as the source from which the Pradhan or Prakriti emerges. So,
See, in that way, Shiva is also called Dampati. The Purush and the male and the female together.
That is a more is a fitter description, I think. Dampati. Yeah.
Dampati, yeah.
Yeah.
The term used is Dampati for Parvati. Sides of Shiva is Ardhanarishwar.
Yeah.
Half Purusha and half Prakriti.
Right.
So for clear understanding, I think these concepts are important because ultimately it's all in concept. These are all concepts: the concept of God, the concept of Purusha, the concept of Prakriti, that is there in the Sankhya. Then there are other concepts in the other philosophies. So for better understanding, these terms may have been used, but ultimately it's an experience which goes beyond all this. So when Arjun says over here, I see you without the beginning, without the end, without the middle, and when he describes him on all sides, it just blends into one. Like Sunilji was last time saying, when the fan is whirling at a high speed, you can't see the blades. It's just one movement. So there could be various ways, thought processes to describe this and various kind of perceptions. So we'll go by the Purush and the Prakriti as the male and the female. I'll read the next. Sorry.
See, then you come to the line before that.
Yeah.
Tvamavyaya Shashvata Dharma Gopta.
Yeah. Protector of the Dharma. Dharma Gupta. Yeah. So, the Dharma Gupta, we can understand that as, see, Krishna is born to establish Dharma in this period. Maybe Arjun sees that because Arjun sees the flow and he sees that he's the one who's come to establish Dharma, because in the latter verses, he shows him that I have already, and he tells him also that I have already killed these people. You simply be an instrument, Nimit Matra. He uses these words. So probably Arjun already sees this, that he is the one who's come to establish Dharma in this form of Krishna, or he's the one who's continuously, taking away, what would we say? He's continuously establishing, or the process of creation or the process of annihilation goes on continuously. The process of creation and dissolution goes on continuously. So Dharma as such is not explained here, but probably Arjun is seeing that in the vision that Krishna is born to establish Dharma. We could take it as that, or if anybody has a better explanation of this, Shashvata Dharma Gopta, the eternal protector of Dharma.
No, see, the question is that the ageless dharma
Hmm.
requires protection.
Yes,
From what? Protection from what?
protection from the evil, from the earth. From see, the duality is, I mean, protection from what? It has, we have to come down to that level of duality where there is dharma and adharma. If there is only dharma and everything moves on, then there is no movement. It's one standard thing. But we live in that world of plurality. There is the good and the evil. There is the opposites, the duality. So dharma has to be protected.
No, in one of our discussions earlier, we were saying that actually seeing things as opposites is one way, and seeing them as composites is another way. And that's why we said that he appears in all forms. In that chapter 10, we said he appears in different forms. Even Dyutam Chalayatam Asmi, we discussed that.
Yeah.
So in that case,
So see, to see this, to have this change in perception requires a lot of effort. It just doesn't come overnight. That's a process. That is our
Okay.
dharma, so to reach that state.
I think it's
so
a valid question.
Yeah, no, one can say that there is dharma and there is adharma, and the other way would be that there is a level, as Sunilji was saying, that we move from one level to another, and that moving
Yes.
from one level to another appears to be more in line with non-duality.
So last time even you had mentioned the virtues, when beyond a point, they become doshas.
Right.
So it just blends into black and white, black and white, black and white. What point, to what point, what point is a balancing factor?
Yeah.
That pure sattva, which is totally balancing, which is neither rajas nor tamas, which is neither black nor white, which is a Krishna, which we call. When you go beyond all this black and white, beyond the opposites, to reach that state and remain in that state is the process. That's the journey. And it's not something which comes about very easily.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So, if I understand you right, then if I slip into a state of non-awareness,
yeah,
then I am likely to commit adharma. Then I am likely to commit adharma.
Yes.
So, from
Yes.
avidya, let's say.
Yes. Yes. That's
And
true.
so, I actually the ageless religion has to be protected. Means I have to protect it from myself. My tendency to fall into.
True.
Yeah.
That's
Fall into the material plane.
Correct. So that is total conquering of the mind, total conquering of the klishta vrittis. And when you are established in dharma, the word established in a state where you don't return, from where there is no return. Yeah, Sunilji wanted to say something.
Yeah, so this is a simple and an excellent query. To my mind, really, वो धर्म में क्या हुआ जिसको कि प्रोटेक्शन हमें करना पड़े, हम तो बिल्कुल असमर्थ हैं. एंड ऐसे भी धर्म तो कहते हैं कि सनातन है, इट इज एटर्नल. More and more, what I'm coming to the realization, it might appear that अधर्म का ज्यादा है, धर्म का विलीन हो रहा है वगैरह वगैरह. और अगर हम आज की सोसाइटी को देखते हैं तो ऐसा कंक्लूड करने में कोई बहुत कोई आउट ऑफ द वे कोई कंक्लूजन नहीं होगा. परंतु मैं जैसे ज्यादा विचार कर, मैं मानता हूं कि एक चीज तो फ्रॉम अ सांख्य स्टैंड पॉइंट, धर्म इज, इट इज, मतलब उसको, द वर्ल्ड इज एवर इन बैलेंस और द यूनिवर्स इज एवर इन बैलेंस. बाय इट्स वेरी नेचर इट कैन नॉट बी ड्रॉन आउट ऑफ बैलेंस, राइट? तो धर्म विलीन हो ही नहीं सकता, मतलब इट्स इम्पॉसिबिलिटी. नाउ लेकिन प्रतीत होता है, नाउ दैट मे बी a little bit due to our own resonance with certain things outside. मतलब as Asha ji just said कि हमारे अंदर जब अधर्म रहता है तो हम उस चीज को बड़े जल्दी बाहर देख पाते हैं. Whereas सर और भी जगह अपन ने और सिचुएशन में हमने देखा है कि things always get worse before they get better in their own scheme of things. मतलब nature does not tolerate imbalance beyond a point. मतलब अपन चलते हुए इम्बैलेंस हुए तो गिर जाते हैं, हम ज्यादा इम्बैलेंस होके चल नहीं सकते. और कितनी सिचुएशंस, चाहे ऑफिस सिचुएशंस आप देखें, ऑर्गेनाइजेशन सिचुएशन देखें, फैमिली सिचुएशन देखें, दे गेट मेसी बट देन दे इवेंचुअली कम बैक, a new kind of equilibrium is found. So even this one might just be a prelude to an intensely spiritual era. And as a matter of fact, I think it's a necessity. क्योंकि जितना ज्यादा पेंडुलम दूसरी तरफ जाता है तो लोग जब तक देखेंगे नहीं कि अरे भाई ये पैराडाइम से हम कहाँ डिस्ट्रक्शन तक पहुंच गए, ऑलमोस्ट आत्मघात तक पहुंच गए, तब तक उनके माइंड फ्रेम बदलेंगे नहीं. until this is just lukewarm, people say नहीं 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 ठीक है तूने दिखता, मैंने होता वही है जो हमें दिखता है. लेकिन जब इस पैराडाइम को हम बिलीव करते हुए, आत्मसात करते हुए आगे बढ़ते हैं, तब हम देखते हैं कि ये दिस इज अ डिस्ट्रक्टिव पैराडाइम और इससे तो ना केवल हमारा, पूरी प्रकृति का नाश होने का चांस है. ओनली देन मे बी वन इज शेकन अप इंडिविजुअली एंड कलेक्टिवली, देन टू रिफ्लेक्ट एंड से नहीं, what underlies the visible is what is truly significant, and that will be the dawn of an entirely new era, more deep than any previous eras. So I think when we regard or describe a certain situation, it's more a reflection of our own state of being than anything outside. So in principle, I believe, I agree with you that धर्म को protect हम तो definitely नहीं कर सकते. So भगवान शायद करने के आने की जरूरत, even that may be only a matter of saying. It's a way of describing to the layman that my mechanism is inbuilt to correct deviations. अब उसको आम आदमी को कहना जरा मुश्किल होता है कि भाई किस तरह से है, तो उसका सिंपल ये है कि भाई हम आके और उसको रिपेयर कर देते हैं. या बट आई थिंक एक्चुअल मैकेनिज्म धर्म शायद डिस्ट्रक्टिबल है नहीं. आई फील
True. Beyond. Can't hear you, sir. You're
Interesting is what you said, Sunil ji. That is the first word of the third line. Tvam avyayaha. So you are avyay. That means that balance cannot be disturbed. What you were saying.
Yeah.
Tvam avyayaha. So Sanatanastum Purusho Mato me. That is what I am realizing. That's what Arjun is saying. Maybe I am realizing it.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's Arjun is realizing.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's how I'm describing.
Good.
Okay, so now we
Yeah.
can move on to the third, to 11.9.
अनादिमध्यान्तमनन्तवीर्यम् अनन्तबाहुं शशिसूर्यनेत्रं पश्यामि त्वां दीप्तहुताशवक्त्रं स्वतेजसा विश्वमिदं तपन्तम्.
See, when we read these verses, we understand that Arjun is also, there is a lack of words or language is faltering because he's again saying the same thing. I see you without beginning, without middle, without end, possessing unlimited prowess and endowed with numberless arms, having the moon and the sun for your eyes, blazing fire for your mouth, and scorching the universe by your radiance. So, how can a mortal describe the Lord? And then Arjun goes on in the next verse.
द्यावा पृथिव्योरिदमन्तरं हि व्याप्तं त्वयैकेन दिशश्च सर्वा दृष्ट्वाद्भुतं रूपमुग्रं तवेदं लोकत्रयं प्रव्यथितं महात्मन्.
The whole space between the heaven and earth and all the quarters are entirely filled by you alone. Seeing this transcendent, dreadful form of yours, O soul of the universe, all the three worlds feel greatly alarmed. The vision is so powerful, so large, so magnanimous. It's filling the space between heaven and earth and all the quarters. He's there everywhere, all pervading, entirely filled by you alone. And naturally, when somebody is able to see everything at one time, one feels greatly alarmed. So it's something beyond our mental capacity. We'll read the next verse, sir.
अमीहि त्वां सुरसङ्घा विशन्ति केचिद् भीताः प्राञ्जलयो गृह्णन्ति स्वस्तीत्युक्त्वा महर्षिसिद्धसङ्घाः स्तुवन्ति त्वां स्तुतिभिः पुष्कलाभिः.
He said that all the host of gods are entering you, some with their palms joined out of fear, are recounting your names and glories. Multitudes of Maharishis, Siddhas are saying, let there be peace. They are extolling you by excellent hymns. So now some of the gods and some of the Maharishis, they have realized that God is the supreme, so their palms are joined and some are fearful. But they all are recounting his names and glories and they're saying, let there be peace. Okay, so anybody wants to say anything about these verses? We read the next verse, sir.
रुद्रादित्या वसवो ये च साध्या विश्वेश्विनौ मरुतश्चोष्मपाश्च गन्धर्वयक्षासुरसिद्धसङ्घा वीक्षन्ते त्वां विस्मिताश्चैव सर्वे.
So now Arjun is describing all the beings of the world. So he's talking about the Rudras, Adityas, Vasus, the Sadhyas, which are the spirits in the sky, the Vishwadevas, Ashwini Kumars, the Maruts, Mains, the Gandharvs, the Yakshas, the Asuras, Siddhas, all of them, all these beings which are there, which he has heard about, or now and now he's seeing them personally, and he all of them gazing upon you. So the world is made up of all these beings. So it's like God is the head of the universe and he has assigned all the power to these beings to run the universe. And all of them gazing at him. So all these names, all these beings, Adityas, Vasus, Ashwini Kumar, the Maru, at least the Mains, the Gandharvs, Yakshas, Asuras, Siddhas, they've all mentioned in chapter 10. If we meditate on one, we reach the final supreme. So now Arjun is mentioning them all at one time, that they are there. So shall we read the next verse?
रूपम महत्ते बहुवक्त्र नेत्रम महाबाहो बहुबाहूरुपादम बहुदरम बहुदंष्ट्राकरालं दृष्ट्वा लोका व्यथितास्तथाहम्.
So he says that the Lord, he's telling Krishna, Lord, seeing the stupendous and dreadful form of yours, possessing numerous mouths, eyes, arms, thighs, feet, bellies, and teeth, the worlds are terror stricken, and so am I. So whoever sees the Lord in its full form is terror stricken. All the above beings are terror stricken. So in a way, maybe all of them are also seeing the Lord in his full glory. So we read the next.
Yeah. नभस्पृशं दीप्तमनेकवर्णं व्यात्ताननं दीप्तविशालनेत्रं दृष्ट्वा हि त्वां प्रव्यक्तान्तरात्मा धृतिन्न विन्दामि शमं च विष्णो.
King Lord, seeing your form reaching the heavens, effulgent, multicolored, having its mouth wide open and possessing large flaming eyes, with my most self frightened, have lost self composure, and I find no peace. So this vision is very unnerving to Arjun. He has lost sense of balance and he finds no peace. So Vinoba says that I never want to see this vision. I want to see God in a small idol. He says God in his full form is there in the small idol of his idol, and God in his full form is there in the cosmic vision also. He says, what is the difference? He says it's just like a small photograph. The photograph is whole. A small photograph has all the attributes. It shows the face fully, only thing in a small way. And if you blow up that photograph, what's there in the small version is there in the. It's just a small version or a big version. There is no difference. So he says, I don't have the capacity. I'm not capable of seeing the full vision, and I'm happy to see the Lord in his small form. He says that the sun is far away, which is good. If the sun were to come closer to us, we wouldn't be able to bear it. So it's just right that the sun is far away. So there is no need for us to see the cosmic vision. Whatever is there in the cosmic vision is in the small form of God, which we see every day, which is there in everything around. So if we can have this vision that God is everywhere, all the time, if our study, if that chapter 10, if all these chapters can lead us to that kind of an that God is there everywhere. His mouth is wide open. Things just flow into him and out of him. Everything comes from him and everything goes into him. If we can have this vision, then there is nothing more to be done in life, or seen in life, or known in life. So now Arjun has lost his self composure, and we'll read what he says in the next verse.
नभस्पृशं दीप्तमनेक. Did I?
We read this, sir.
Yeah.
25.
Yeah. दंष्ट्राकरालानि च ते मुखानि दृष्ट्वैव कालानलसन्निभानि दिशो न जाने न लभे च शर्मं प्रसीद देवेश जगन्निवास.
So he says, seeing your faces frightful on account of their awesome teeth and blazing like fire at the time of universal destruction, I am utterly bewildered and I find no peace. Therefore, have mercy upon me, O Lord of celestials, O abode of the universe. So Arjun also cannot see this form beyond a point because it's too much to take. It's blazing like fire, there are dreadful teeth, and he sees everything entering it and getting destroyed. So he's utterly. So we read the next two verses, sir.
Yeah. अमी च त्वां धृतराष्ट्रस्य पुत्राः सर्वे सहैवाव निपालसङ्घैः भीष्मो द्रोणः सूतपुत्रस्तथासौ सहास्मदीयैरपि योधमुख्यैः.
We'll read the next one also.
वक्त्राणि ते त्वरमाणा विशन्ति दंष्ट्राकरालानि भयानकानि केचिद् विलग्ना दशनान्तरेषु सन्दृश्यन्ते चूर्णितैरुत्तमाङ्गैः.
So he says that all those sons of Dhritarashtra with hosts of kings are entering you. Bhishma, Drona, and yonder Karna, with the principal warriors on our side as well, are rushing headlong into your fearful mouths, looking all the more terrible on account of the dreaded teeth. Some are seen stuck up in the gaps between your teeth, with their heads crushed. So now Arjun is able to see the future of the war. He's able to see the end of the war. And he sees that Bhishma, Drona, Karna, and the principal warriors from the Pandav side also. Not that the Pandavas are going to be spared. Whoever has to go is entering the mouth of the Lord of the vision which he's seeing. And the vision is very terrible because now, earlier he's described the mouths. Now he's saying there are teeth also, very dreadful teeth. And the people who are getting killed, who are entering you, are stuck up in the gaps between your teeth. So it's a very dreadful sight. And they are powdered, they are crushed, their heads are crushed. So if we actually, I don't know if we should really discuss all this, but if you see that there is birth and death, which is continuous. Birth and death is continuous in this creation. Not only beings, animals, human beings, animals, trees, plants, even the non-moving objects. Everything is undergoing the process of change. So everything is entering into some kind of eternity and then just emerging out of it. So this is what Arjun is seeing, the continuous process of change, of creation and destruction. So we'll read the next verse.
यथा नदीनां बहवोऽम्बुवेगाः समुद्रमेवाभिमुखा द्रवन्ति तथा तवामी नरलोकवीरा विशन्ति वक्त्राण्यभिविज्वलन्ति.
As the myriad streams of rivers rush towards the sea alone, so do these warriors of the mortal world enter your flaming mouths. So now he's describing like the rivers, there is no stopping the river. The river simply moves on and on. So here also, people of this mortal world, there is no control. All the control remains in the hands of God. And when they have to go, they simply enter into that eternity. We read the next one.
यथा प्रदीप्तं ज्वलनं पतंगा विशन्ति नाशाय समृद्धवेगा तथैव नाशाय विशन्ति लोकात् तवापि वक्त्राणि समृद्धवेगा.
Arjun is as if become a poet. He's describing. describing like the rivers are entering into the sea, and then like now he's describing as the moths rush with great speed into the blazing fire for extinction out of moha, infatuation. Even so, these people, they are helpless. They are entering with great rapidity into your mouths to meet their doom. It is just like the human is so, or the beings of this world are so helpless because the, and they're just entering. So Arjun is describing them in various ways. So Vinoba also says these verses are just to be read and, with awe and amazement, with reverence.
It's poetry,
Yeah.
but this moth and flame
Hmm.
metaphor
Yeah.
is a favorite
Yeah.
in that entire part of the world, stretching
Yeah.
from say Turkey to North India.
Because it's so amazing. How can anybody, voluntarily or be attracted to death, be attracted to extinction?
Hmm.
So anybody else would like to, share on this or share their thoughts? Or probably we can move on to the next word. Sunilji, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm just trying to unmute.
Yeah, you are unmuted.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, see, Sigmund Freud, apparently towards the end of his life, see, all through his active years, he said that human beings are guided by eros, the desire for life.
Hmm.
And towards the end, he said, I realized that alongside eros, human beings are also guided by thanatos. That is the urge for death. So both of these are present, and that is, it may sound paradoxical, but actually, it's quite logical. Because whenever one force is present, a counter force has to be present. Otherwise, the balance cannot be maintained.
Yeah.
So, the urge to live is balanced within the individual by the urge to die also. And we see it all the time. As a matter of fact, sometimes the urge to die, especially in the current era, is way more visible than the urge to live. I mean, people are living their lives with bit of reflection. They can determine that this is not conducive to their health, this is not conducive to their existence, this is not conducive to the collective existence, and yet they're just going along. So in a way, it is the satisfaction of the urge to die, perhaps, that is kind of just manifesting itself. But nevertheless, because life is incomplete without death, so the two urges again are, to my mind, they're equally valid and equally, shall we say, important or significant, because one completes the other. So the moth entering the fire is just, kind of one very vivid illustration of Thanatos, the urge to die.
So we read the next verse. No,
One
sorry.
more aspect
Yeah.
comes to my mind, Sunilji, as you were saying, that in the previous word, there is a great mention of Vega. The rivers enter with great speed.
Yeah.
Yatha nadinam bhavom vega samudrameva vimukha dravanti. So this going at a high speed is also like, self an urge to self-destruct. It's a self-destructive urge. And we consider increasing speed as progress.
Hmm.
And you see a lot of people who race, a lot of people who go mountaineering, many of them have perhaps this self-destructive urge. And we also want to go so fast, that Elon Musk was trying to make some hyper loop or something from Pune to Mumbai. There was a proposal
Yeah.
that in that hyperloop you can reach from Pune to Mumbai in about an hour or less than an hour.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah, of course, now that proposal has been kept aside, but all this urge to speed up is also in a way indicative of that self-destructive urge.
Yeah. The
very
other side, like Sri Ramakrishna had the urge to reach the mother or to understand the real essence. So it depends. You see, it can take a different form where the yogi, his only urge is to reach the final state of samadhi or to reach. So we could take it as that. We could take it as the urge to self-destruction. We could take it in any way.
And
actually.
in this verse also, Samruddha Vega has come
Yeah,
twice. Samruddha
correct.
Vega. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Speed. Great.
Actually, that's a very significant point that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
That death could not be considered just as the death of the mortal frame, which is actually neither there nor there, because it just kind of recurs and all that. That
Yeah.
urge to death may be actually death of the ego.
Yeah.
Now, if so, that's the healthiest urge that is possible.
Yeah. You see, as you go on in this path, as you go on moving, then you lose interest in all these, and that urge to the final state becomes quickened. This Veda word is used in the Yoga Sutras also.
So maybe, sir, this sometimes एक जब विकृत स्थिति होती है तब वो अर्ज का एक्सप्रेशन होता है कि भाई लेट द फिजिकल बॉडी एंड, बट वो विकृत स्थिति है. Maybe the actual urge is the annihilation of the ego, which is what we are all, inherently kind of born with, in all the fitness of things.
Yeah, but that is certainly a possible interpretation. But the word used here is nasha. It is not laya.
Yeah.
You don't merge. It is not the word is not merge. The word is nasha. Vishanti nashaya.
So whenever there is the ego, you call it the destruction of the ego.
Yeah. So, but when it is nadi entering samudra, it is not nasha. It is laya, vilaya.
Correct.
Yeah. So the nadi willingly wanting to enter into the ocean, into the vastness. So the human being is the one who's on that path, is willingly wanting to merge into the supreme.
Right.
Yeah.
हाँ, और वैसे तो जो सिमिली यूज की है, जो पतंगा आग में जाता है वो कोई ईगो एनिहिलेशन के लिए नहीं जाता, वो तो maybe either deceived by senses or for whatever reason we don't know. तो yeah, उस तरह से तो नाश की ही बात हो रही है. But
तथैव नाशाय विशन्ति लोका.
Yeah.
So perhaps what is implied is the cycle of nature.
Cycle of nature. True. Whatever is the implication, everybody is helpless and a higher power moves the world. All right, so we are going to
Yeah.
11:30.
Yeah. लेलीह्यसे ग्रसमानः समन्तात् लोकान् समग्रान् वदनैर्ज्वलद्भिः तेजोभिरापूर्य जगत्समग्रं भासस्तवोग्राः प्रतपन्ति विष्णो.
He says, devouring all the worlds through your flaming mouths and licking them on all sides, O Lord Vishnu, your fiery rays fill the whole universe with their fierce radiance and are scorching it. And it's like as if you are enjoying all this. Everything is just entering you and you're licking it, and your radiance is filling the world and it's actually scorching it. Okay, so shall we read the next verse?
Yeah. आख्याहि मे को भवानुग्ररूपो नमोऽस्तु ते देववर प्रसीद विज्ञातुमिच्छामि भवन्तमाद्यं न हि प्रजानामि तव प्रवृत्तिम्.
Now, Arjuna is saying that, tell me who you are, O with a form so terrible. My obeisance to you, O best of gods, be kind to me. I wish to know you, the primal being in particular, for I know not what you intend to do. So now the mortal in Arjun, he's actually so we can look at it that way, that he's trying to seek deeper knowledge. He's trying to ask him, who are you? Tell me who you are, with a form so terrible. He wants to know him. He because he says, I don't know what you intend to do. So he wants the Lord to tell. The Lord is actually showing him the cosmic vision and he's seeing everything. But still, he wants to know who he is. And then the Lord is going to answer him in the next verse.
श्री भगवानुवाच कालोऽस्मि लोकक्षयकृत् प्रवृद्धो लोकान् समाहर्तुमिह प्रवृत्तः ऋतेऽपि त्वान्न भविष्यन्ति सर्वे एव स्थिताः प्रत्यनीकेषु योधाः.
So Sri Bhagwan says, I am the mighty Kal, the eternal time spirit, the destroyer of the worlds. I am out to exterminate these people. Even without you, all arrayed in the enemy camp shall die. So basically, he's saying, I'm time. The most powerful is in the hands of God. He says, I'm time. Everything just flows into me. And I have already killed all people. Even without you, all these people shall die because everybody is helpless. Everybody has to move. Everything has to move into him. Everything has to change. He's the eternal time. And nobody is eternal besides him. He's telling Arjun in other words also, there's nobody eternal. I am the eternal. All of you are mortal. All of you are changeful. He says, Rite api tvam. Rite means without you. So this is going to happen. Yes, sir. And we'll read both these verses and then we will discuss.
Yeah.
So, 23. Tasmat Vamati.
तस्मात् त्वमुत्तिष्ठ यशो लभस्व जित्वा शत्रून् भुङ्क्ष्व राज्यं समृद्धम् मयैवेते निहताः पूर्वमेव निमित्तमात्रं भव सव्यसाचिन् द्रोणं च भीष्मं च जयद्रथं च.
So we'll not go on with the next verse, only this 33, 32 and 33. So Vinoba lays a lot of stress on this verse 33. In this whole chapter, he says this verse 33 and the last verse of this chapter. So this is the crux of this chapter. He says, therefore you do arise and win glory, conquering foes, enjoy the affluent kingdom. These warriors stand already slain by me. Be you only an instrument, Arjun. This word nimitta matra, an instrument, nimit, a mere instrument. So these two verses, everything is already predestined. Everything is already there. The drama of life is already planned, and it's going on as per the plan. And we have to carry out the plan. So this word instrument, where he says you be the Nimit. So Vinoba says, is it easy to be a Nimit? So how do we understand this word Nimit? The word instrument. How do we understand? So if there is a writer, what is his instrument? The pen. Or if there is a warrior, his instrument is the weapon. If there is a housewife, her instrument is the vessels in the kitchen, or she's cooking, the knife. Now, will it do if the instruments are not in good shape? If there is a carpenter and his instruments are not okay, if there's a musician and his tabla or his veena or his guitar or whatever is his instrument doesn't produce the sound properly, he has to tune it, right? Can you work with a bad instrument? Can you work efficiently? You can work, but can the there? Karmasu Kaushalam will not come with that bad instrument. So he says to be an instrument, he says if I want to be the Lord's chappals, then I have to be soft. If I have to be the Lord's flute, then I have to be hollow. If I have to be any instrument, I have to be in a good shape. Can I be an instrument just like that? No. I have to sharpen myself. I have to tune myself. So Krishna is telling him, therefore you do arise. In both these verses, he says, anyway, without you also this will happen. Whoever is there in the enemy camp will die. And here also he says, everything is already done. Get up and win glory. You see, we have to go back to the Mahabharata. This Bhagavad Gita comes in. So before the war, Duryodhan and Arjun both go to Krishna's home, palace in Dwarka. And Duryodhan goes there and he sits at the head of the bed, at the uh, seat near the head of where Krishna is sleeping. He goes and sits there. And Arjun comes next, and Arjun sits at the feet of the Lord. And when Krishna opens his eyes, naturally, whom will he see first? When he opens his eyes, Arjun is in front of him because Arjun is sitting at his feet. And then Duryodhan says, then he looks behind and he sees Duryodhan. And then he's asking both of them, how come both of you are here? So they say that the war is going to begin and both of us have come to seek your help. So Duryodhan immediately says, I have come first, so you have to oblige me first. So Krishna says, but I have seen Arjun first, so I'm going to give him the wish first. So then he says, before you ask for my help, I want to tell both of you that I am not going to fight the war, but I have a Narayani Sena, which is 10 crores of warriors, and they are actually my reflection. They are as strong as me. One of you can take that Narayani Sena, and one of you can have me, but I have laid down my weapons for the war. I will be a mere charioteer. He says, Arjun, you have to choose first. So, of course, there is an argument between Duryodhan and Krishna that who should choose first. But anyway, Krishna has the final word. And Arjun says, Krishna, I want you. So, Duryodhan is very happy. Duryodhan understands that it is said in that Sanskrit verse that Duryodhan understands that Krishna is not going to be with him. But he's so deluded that he's happy that the army is going to be with him. And he goes away very happily. And when he goes away, Krishna is asking Arjun, Arjun, you know that I'm not going to fight the war. Why have you chosen me? So then Arjun says that Krishna, you have already got the kirti, the fame in this world. And you alone are capable of destroying this world without your weapons. But also, Krishna, I also am capable of killing all of them single-handedly. Let me gain kirti. Let this be an opportunity for me to gain fame. And it's now here, it's like Krishna is reminding him, I have already done, I'm already your charioteer, I'm already the driver of your chariot. Get up and win the glory. I've already done. Now don't say, should I fight the war and should I not fight the war? Shall I kill Bhishma? Shall I kill Drona? He says, no, It's your duty. Just get up and fight the war. They have already been slain by me. And you just be an instrument. Be a good instrument. So to be an instrument requires all the effort, requires the lifetimes. So Vinoba is stressing a lot on these two verses. Be an instrument. He says, is it easy to be an instrument? And actually, if you think deeper into it, we have the instruments. We have the instruments of our organs. We have the instrument of the buddhi. The final instrument is the buddhi, which has to discriminate between the right and the wrong, which has to make us do the right, take the right choices in life and do the right things. So Arjun, at the beginning and the first is under delusion. He's not able to understand what is the right thing and what is the wrong thing, because his instrument, his buddhi, is clouded. To keep that instrument in the right form all the time requires all of you, requires your full awareness. So this is what these two verses are about. And in this, he says, in this whole chapter, I cannot sit down and discuss and analyze all this description of the Lord. It is what it is. I use my intellect because it's beyond my intellect. I cannot sit down and analyze. The Lord has to give me the vision to see it in the first place. And I'm merely supposed to see him in his full glory. But what I'm supposed to do is I'm supposed to work on myself and do my dharma and become an proper instrument. Yes, so now, do we have anything to say?
So being an instrument basically means being devoid of the, so to say, power of agency and allow, the forces impinging upon you to just exhaust themselves out and move, with the flow. And now, see, paradoxically, or maybe not paradoxically, it is the easiest thing to be. In one way, being the instrument means that we simply remain aware, as you, Ashaji, rightly said just now. We simply remain aware as to what is coming in and what is going out. Happen. You don't have to address the complexity inherent in an external situation. You don't have to keep, remaining alert as to what's happening inside, outside. And yet, perhaps because our senses are oriented outside, and therefore we see duality, therefore we see as separate from the world at large, and therefore we perceive ourselves as a different entity, and therefore we set about protecting ourselves, and therefore the whole power of agency is born. So, being an instrument is at the same time the easiest and obviously the most difficult thing.
Yes.
What comes to mind is a parallel in the prayer of Saint Francis of Assisi, who says, Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. And then it is also very similar to Asatoma, Sadgamaya, Tamasoma. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. So we see a parallel there in the prayer of Saint Francis of Assisi. Yeah.
Yeah. It brings us to this idea of dharma. Everything is preordained in this life. We have to do our part and we have to do it efficiently.
But the difference is that here Arjuna is becoming an instrument of war, whereas there it is Saint Francis is saying, "Let me make me an instrument of thy peace."
He's a
Though
saint.
I believe Saint Francis was also a warrior at some stage.
So Arjun is going to
So-
get peace through war.
Yeah, war, sir, also a pursuit of peace by other means.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when it is otherwise not possible
But
to.
today we don't believe that. Today we don't want war.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we can avoid it, I mean,
Yeah.
who would like to
Right.
have it? It's
Yeah.
just simply it's ugly.
Yeah.
War is, mostly involves the most, shall we say, most repellent of emotions and
Right.
right.
Because
That's
today
probably
any
the
war
reason
will
why.
destroy the whole planet.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, that's why today we have to oppose war, no?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
No, I mean, destruction is destruction, sir. Destruction is this precious life that has come to us. Ideally, it's not to be spent destroying, but to keep building up, because the Atma itself, to realize that, it's like
Yeah.
turning the milk
Yeah.
or the buttermilk
Yeah.
into butter. So ideally, we want to devote our time to that. But maybe sometimes, like Dr. Bhavandar used to say, Dr. Bhavandar, the TMTC director at the time, that he said, in order to be able to do what you want in life, you have to do a great deal that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
So, and I found a lot of truth in that statement.
Yeah.
So maybe war is a part of that bit that you don't want to do, but nevertheless must engage in, so that eventually we come to a situation where we can flow with what is dear to us.
Anyway, so the whole idea of the Bhagavad Gita, the war or no war, is to do your duty. And like you said, doing things which we don't like, rising above the and dislikes. Basically, the whole aim is to do the duty. We have to sharpen ourselves so that we do the duty in the most efficient.
And I think it's worth emphasizing that here the duty refers to Swadharma.
Yeah.
And that discerning Swadharma is what requires a great deal of awareness and a great deal of courage. Because that will mean that we have to go against a lot within and without.
Yeah.
Situations call for a certain course of action, which is tendencies within say nahi kya zarurat hai, and of course people without say अरे ये सब इतना idealistic है. तो ये दोनों forces को आप चेक में रखते हुए आप स्वधर्म को पहले आइडेंटिफाई करें और फिर उसको लिव आउट करें. This is a fairly tall order.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I feel, and again, this is something that I've reflected on for a long time, that from Swadharma, if we are not careful in identifying Swadharma, it can very easily relate to repression, right? Which is quite unhealthy. In that, if by force of external circumstance, we are put into something, and अगर वो आपके स्वधर्म से मैच नहीं कर, देखो एक्सटर्नल फोर्सेस तो बहुत स्ट्रांग होते ही हैं, राइट? और अगर वो आपके स्वधर्म से मैच नहीं करता तो बाहर लोग कहेंगे नहीं कर लो ना. Give you an instance where suppose each person, let me take my example. I have to be earning money in order to support my family, right? Now there are always occasions when we can adopt slightly unhealthy means to be able to earn the requisite money. And one could as well say that yes, उसमें क्या है भाई, पैसे ऐसे कमाओ चाहे वैसे कमाओ, आपको कमाने तो है ही ना. Yet I believe that's not the performance of Swadharma, because उसमें फैमिली से पहले मैं आता हूँ ना. अगर मैं अपना ही ड्यूटी, मैंने अपने आप को ही, if I am allowing myself to just wither away, अगर मैं अपना अंतर आत्मा को अगर मैं डिस्ट्रॉय करके, if I am buying prosperity, then it may or may not be right. So it's very very delicate, this identification of स्वधर्म. सारी कला मेरे ख्याल में, क्योंकि एक बार बोध हो गया स्वधर्म का, then it doesn't require too much effort to carry it out. फिर तो आपका पूरा बीइंग आपके पीछे लग जाता, उसके पीछे लग जाता है, तो वो हो जाएगा. It is the identification of Swadharma which I think is the crux of the matter.
Yeah. And it's very interesting in this verse, he's calling Arjun Savyasachin, who's able to use his weapons with both his hands, ambidextrous. It's very difficult for a right-hander to write with the left hand also, but Arjun has mastered the art. So he's telling him that you are capable. When Arjun was a little boy, when they were eating their meat, the light went off. And as a young boy, it occurred to him that if I can eat in the dark, why can't I shoot in the dark? And then he trained himself, he perfected the dark also. So Arjun is that thinking kind, who is a bright kind, who gets the inner intuitions, to do things. So he has not only perfected himself to eat in the dark and to shoot in the dark, he also perfected himself to use with both his hands. Savyasachin, who can use both his hands skillfully to do his to wield his weapons. So you have to make yourself capable. You have to work on yourself to be an instrument. And he's using the word Savyasachin. So it has meaning, requires a lot of training. So this is about these two verses, which can be reflected upon a lot, especially this verse 11.33. We have 3 minutes. Maybe we can just read one more verse, because there's nothing much to explain in that verse, and then we'll begin 11.35 in the next class. 11.34, sir, you're on mute.
द्रोणं च भीष्मं च जयद्रथं च कर्णं तथान्यानपि योधवीरान् मया हतांस्त्वं जहिमा व्यथिष्ठा युध्यस्व जेतासि रणे सपत्नान्.
So he's telling him, now you do kill Drona and Bhishma and Jayadratha and Karna and other brave warriors who already stands slain, killed by me. Fear not, fight, and you will surely conquer the enemies in war. So these are the threats to Arjun. Who's a threat? Drona, who's his teacher, who's as strong, or if not stronger than Bhishma, who has this boon to die when he wants. Jayadratha, Karna. Karna is equal to him. And there is another story of Jayadratha. So he's telling him that I've already killed all these characters. You just get up, fight, and don't fear. You will surely conquer them in war. So he's assuring him that you will win the war. Okay, so with this we can end today's session. So we have 1 minute or 2 minutes. You can sit. 2 minutes we have, if anybody would like to say.
एक तरह से तो अंपायर ही प्लेयर के साइड में है तो उसमें प्लेयर को भय है ही नहीं. मतलब फिर भी अचंभे की बात यह है, इट स्टिल टेकन 7 more chapters
Of course.
for Arjuna to reach that situation.
Yeah.
So
it's
मतलब इससे ज्यादा क्या?
The faith idea. कि faith है कि भगवान मेरे साथ है, and I do my duty. Of course, the trials are going to be there.
Interesting part is that in this chapter, the Sankhya scheme is first employed of Prakriti and Purush. And then somewhere a concept which is alien to Sankhya, that is gods. A lot of gods are entering the mouth of the Vishwarup. So in a way, some attempt has been made to bring together Sankhya and Vedanta, if I may say, which are actually two different schools of philosophy. But in this chapter, somehow they are brought together. So that is a very interesting. So that's why this chapter is a very important one from that point of view.
Right.
Anyway, so it is 10:15, and I think
Right.
we have to stop here.
Right.
So we continue next time.
Okay. Namaste.
Namaste.